So regular viewers of the left wing will know that we talked recently about how the impression of the economy and what the economy actually is might be two different things. That people have a generally negative view of the economy, despite the fact that there are a lot of positive economic metrics. And there are people who are fighting very hard on both sides of that battle. And recently, a new piece of ammo just dropped for the people who say the economy actually sucks. And it's our homelessness rate. The United States experienced a dramatic 12% increase in homelessness to its highest reported level, as rents are soaring, and a decline in coronavirus era pandemic relief programs is leaving people without any options for housing. It is maybe one of the most damning things in this country that we have the richest population in terms of GDP in human history. Like in all of human history, we are the richest nation to ever exist. Fuck you, Mansa Musa. You didn't have air conditioning. But like
deep pull, John. That's a deep pull.
but it's crazy to me that over 700,000 people. I'm sorry, 653,000 people. There's been a 70,000 person increase from the past year. Over 653,000 people are homeless in this country, in the richest country on earth. And there is a lot of perceptions about that oh, they're just druggies or they're just whatever. And it's like, I don't think that many more people are just suddenly becoming druggies. Like, I don't think that it's just randomly these people decided, oh, I want to go bum it. No, it's because of economic conditions. There's a reason that you see some countries have lower rates of homelessness. It's not because their people don't work as hard as Americans. It's because they have the housing. There is a graph that Axios put out recently that shows exactly why this is, and I'll put it up on the screen now. But it shows us that basically since the 2008 financial crisis, we haven't built housing. We used to pretty much, even keeled. Sometimes we'd build less housing than we need. Sometimes we'd build more, but it would go up and down in a wave like most things do. There was a large increase as the bubble continued to inflate before 2008. The crisis happened. And since then, we are now at the highest point of building housing, and we're still building 3.2 million less houses in 2022 than we needed to for our population increase. That is the reason people are becoming homeless. We don't build houses. It is so simple. It's one of those dumb, stupid, simple person brain things that every American should be able to understand, that if the population grows and we don't build more houses, people are going to become homeless. But that message doesn't seem to be getting through to people. Why do you guys think that is? I'll throw to specifically TJ here, since I just kind of left that open and I didn't tell you who to go.
No, that's all right. It's all good. Yeah. So when I first saw this, I work in rental assistance for the state of Indiana. And when I started this about a year and 8 months ago, and I remember looking at several charts about, we were still doing a rental assistance for COVID and everything. And they were talking about, these rates being pulled, we're not going to, or the moratorium was going to end for renting. That was a couple of years back. I remember, what was her name, from Missouri? She sat on the I see her face, but I can't remember. Cory Bush. She, did the protest to extend it. And they extended it, and then they eventually ended it. But I remember seeing, charts and news report after news report saying, hey, we in this moratorium, we are going to have a homelessness crisis. Like, homelessness is going to go through the roof. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what happened. People don't have the money. Like, they don't. And we talk about the metrics of the economy and everything. And unemployment is low, but that doesn't mean people have money, to buy housing. A few years ago, we did a few months ago, we did a show about this very topic, about why younger people, like people 40 and under, aren't buying houses. And something like 10 years ago, your average house was like 200 or 250,000. Now your average house is like 425,000. People can't afford to do it, and rent prices go up too. So, and Also, another thing we talked about on the Left Wing, a show you should follow, by the way, at the Left Wing Pod on YouTube, and we talked about the fact that they were ending the moratorium for student loan repayments. And John, I think we were on the panel together talking about this, and I remember saying, "Hey, just don't pay it. Just don't do it," you know. And I saw when I was looking at the story of the rent, I found out that 40% of people have not paid their student loan payments. Like 40%. I was like, hey, look at that. And now I don't think a lot of them are purposely just not paying it. I just don't think they have the money. And like I said, the economy does have these metrics and everything, but when people don't have the money to buy it or don't have the money to rent, they're not going to be able to. What have you seen in your experience with this, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. People don't have the money. But I want to touch on what you said, John. So I live in downtown Baltimore, and we have so many houses that just sit empty when it comes to individual property owners or corporations buying up large chunks of the city in an attempt to lower the property value of the surrounding neighborhoods and bulldoze it, do what they want. But you know, that often doesn't work. So here we've got something like 14,000 houses that are just sitting empty. They cause fires, like because they're empty. Shit happens. It catches easily. Um, and like 2,000 people unhoused in our city. So there's places for people. It's not like there is a lack of homes. There is lack of incentive, right? And the facts are it would cost less if we put everyone who's experiencing homelessness right now, if we housed them. It would cost
Mhm.
less overall on our infrastructure. But the people who benefit, right, like individually on an individual level from buying up that house and then just letting it sit empty because they don't want to sell it for a loss, or they don't want to rent it for a loss, or they don't want to turn it into government housing, or whatever the case may
Or you could
be.
borrow against it with use as collateral. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's this overall we can say, well, it would cost us less if we got rid of homelessness, and that is true. But like, who foots that bill? Because right now the people who are footing the bill are encouraging this crisis, and Airbnb owners. Like, the housing crisis is so bad for so many different reasons, but the space is there. We could put everyone who's experiencing um homelessness right now into a home, and we don't, for the sake of profit, and that's
So
crazy.
you bring up an interesting point here, because I feel like there's two things that cause the housing crisis, and one is what you're mentioning is greed. That like, we have corporations buying up massive amounts of residential homes and just raising the price. I've read a story a couple years ago about how I think it was Airbnb, no, Zillow. Zillow started because they have all the data on all the housing prices, and they would buy like a, a ton of property in an area, and then like a couple years later they would make an absurd offer on a home they didn't own. They would buy a home that was valued at $200,000 and they'd just buy it for $300,000. And that would, because of the way these markets work, increase the prices of all of the houses in the area, because that one down the street just sold for $300,000. And so by spending an extra $100,000 on that one house, the 20 houses they owned also just increased by $100,000. And it's such a scam, and that is totally happening. But there's another side to this, which I think, you're not going to lose any, audience members complaining about rich corporations screwing us over. But I do think there is a side of this that shows a flaw in democracy, which I find very interesting to talk and think about, because the problem right now in America is a demographic one. You have a large portion of the population skewing older with the baby boomers, at least the native, born American population, where we are replacing our population with immigration, but we are not replacing it, the good old fashioned way. So like that creates a situation where the majority of Americans actually own a home, or at least live in a house where the home is owned by a person, not rented. And every single one of them have an economic incentive to not produce more housing, because if you produce more housing, the value of your house goes down. But that creates a perverse distortion where younger people and people who are less wealthy are locked out of the housing market. And because they have basically not built anything since 2008, and not built anything is an exaggeration. They haven't built enough, nearly enough, not even close to enough. All of those housing prices have skyrocketed. The majority of the population is happy about that because they own their home or live with a family member who owns their home. And so should be a working class issue where the economic incentives would normally be aligned to the masses. Actually, the economic incentives for working class people, especially working class young people, we're actually in the minority of the people who are hurt by housing prices rising. And it's a very interesting topic. And obviously, there's a lot of add-on negative effects of the housing market being what it is that do affect homeowners too. But that's a lot harder to see than just the price of your house going up. So I think that this entire thing of homelessness, as much as it could easily be solved, politically speaking, in a democracy, it's actually quite hard.
You're right. It is difficult, and you see this just talking to people about very easy solutions to something like this by changing zoning laws to allow multifamily housing, and they don't want to do that because that will lower their property value. I will. He's not going to watch this anyway, but over Thanksgiving, I went and visited my parents out in San Diego, and I hadn't been out there before. I've been to San Diego before. My sister got married there. My parents moved there, but my parents just bought a new house out there. And I walked in. My parents' house looks like Iron Man's house. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of everything. It was like it was insane how expensive this house was. And so my dad was driving me around the neighborhood, and he pointed to this one section on the side of the neighborhood they had where it wasn't single family housing, and it was multifamily housing, and that people could get into these houses on a discount based on their income. And he said, is it bad that kind of upsets me? They said that they can get it on a discount. And I was like, well, look, you have to look at the entire problem. And I said that my dad's not like a right wing or anything like that, but he is human. And that's going to lower his property value. We spent a lot of money on this house and everything. But I told him that, look, if we have this problem where you have a people in a certain class making a lot more money, and then people like most other people keep making less and less and having less, do you think the solution to this is to keep these people economically segregated for as long as you possibly can? Will that solve this problem? The answer is no. It never has, and it never will. So, I mean, you're right that, but people aren't looking at that. They're looking at their bottom dollar. And it is unfortunate, but that is the reality. It's a good point. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you look at how many different things in this country are run just specifically for the sake of generating the most possible profit, it makes sense that there are so many things functioning exactly as designed, and there's a lot of different ways that comes into play, and we see people ending up homeless because of it. And it's interesting that you mentioned, I thought I saw when I was reading through just this increase of 12% over this last year, how many people they were over the age of 55. It was a lot of older people as well. There was a large increase of people who were veterans who were unhoused. It's just looking at the demographics, it can happen to anybody and everybody. Everybody's suffering under this economic system, because everything's for profit.
Yeah,
the most possible profit over people.
That what isn't talked about enough is the mental toll that scarcity takes on people. I am so fortunate. My parents own a home. If I ever, I don't know, got hit by a car, couldn't work, couldn't pay rent, and I got evicted, I would have a roof. I would have a room to stay in for the rest of my life, as long as that house doesn't burn down. They ain't getting rid of it. It's going to be there. But there's so many people who don't live that way. There's so many people who have to go to bed every night and wake up every day and go, hey, if I can't make rent this month, I might be homeless. And the economic factors that could change that might be outside of their control. They might already be working 3 jobs to make ends meet and put food on the table for their kid and just barely making rent every month. And if something happens, if they get laid off due to an economic downturn, if they get a major illness and can no longer work, if their boss sexually harasses them and like they end up needing to quit, like whatever it might be that is completely outside their control, they could end up homeless. And there's not a safety net for that, which I find dumb, because
It's
to
horrible.
me, your dad was complaining, TJ, and it makes sense. Like as I said, economic incentives say he should not want that multifamily house to go up. Now, he might think that it's good for everyone in general and vote for it anyway, but him personally, if everyone is voting just for their best interest, if you own a home, it is not within your best interest to vote for multifamily housing, because it's going to drop the value of your home. And the problem that I see with people who frame it that way is it doesn't drop the value of your home. Their home, the current value of every home in America is inflated above its actual value by the zoning laws that are in effect that are stopping housing from being made. God damn it. We love to shit on libertarians in this fucking in the left wing, but they're right about this one. Like this is one thing I always buddy with libertarians on, is like, yeah, get rid of the zoning laws because they're ruining this country. And this is a situation where government interference in a free market is causing increased prices, which are screwing over a lot of people. But the Republicans won't talk about that one now, will they?
Well, yeah, because it's actually the free market interfering with the government. Because so like you guys have been to Europe, and it's a fucking question is that? That's
We're
right, some random
Americans.
people. You guys been to
We've been
Europe?
to Europe.
Haven't we all? What a dumb question. But so in Europe, they don't have the zoning laws we have here in the States, and that you can walk outside of your house and there's a gym, there's a grocery store, there's a convenience store, there's a laundromat, and you can walk. I mean, we've heard about 15-minute cities, like they're all over Europe, and it's fucking illegal to do that here. And that's because you know what? Broken clocks, you mentioned a couple segments ago, John. I saw this one clip of Andrew Tate, of all people. I saw him talking
I did
about.
not think Andrew Tate would come into
Listen,
the
listen, right?
zoning
Yeah,
law
I
debate.
got you. Hey, you pulled up the Mansa Musa. I'm bringing up the Andrew Tate, bringing up wild cards out of nowhere. But so I saw this clip of Andrew Tate talking about how he thought it was really weird that the United States didn't have like a vibrant public transportation system. Like we don't have trains and light rail like everywhere else. And he said, well, there's a reason that they don't in the United States, is because, automobile companies have been lobbying the government for decades now to not implement public transportation so people will buy more cars. And he's 100% right. Like that's the only thing I think he's right about, but he's 100% right about that. And that's another reason that the zoning laws are built that way. Why it's against the law to build a shopping center in a housing district for that very reason. So yeah, I mean it's once again like it's the cold hand of capitalism destroying life for as many people as possible just to make a few people a couple extra bucks.
Cool.
Yeah, and so many people in this country, we like to turn around and blame our neighbor, and that's by design. It's set up that way, right? So that if, like you mentioned, multifamily housing is being proposed in your neighborhood, it'll lower the value of your home. But so many people, they'll buy into this idea that homelessness is a result of laziness, like we mentioned at the beginning of the segment. When we know that that's nowhere close to the case, when like something like 40% of all unhoused people right now are currently working full time, but there's, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think there's any states where you can work a minimum wage job and pay rent anywhere in this country. Like it's not doable. So it's just, yeah, there's no social safety net. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to touch on is, I used to work a little bit in the leasing side, working with people who had Section 8 housing vouchers, and that process alone, like people who are like, just go get government assistance, they have clearly never experienced what government assistance is like in all of its facets. It's just bureaucratic mess, right? There's people who don't care. The system is set up to take as long as possible to just, it dicks people over, and people will be waiting months in, you know, in shelters for housing that might fall through. It's brutal, you know, but definitely not individual failures. And I think when we start to blame individuals for failures of the system, we, you know, we forget to be human, right? We forget our humanity. And that's how we justify all sorts of atrocities, right? Because they're all just
there's no one who
drugs.
deserves to be homeless. Like that's the other thing.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
no one deserves to be home. That only makes life worse for them and makes it harder for them to get better. Like if you think that like they're homeless because they're lazy, okay, cool. Maybe that's the truth. I'm sure there are homeless people who are just
Yeah.
lazy and prefer to be bums. I'm sure that person does exist somewhere out there, right? But like, why do you think not having a house is going to help them? Like, how do you think they're going to improve their lives and get a better job and like be more productive members of society if they don't have a place to fucking shower and store their clothes? Like it just doesn't make sense. Like, if that's what you think the problem is, okay, fine. This still isn't the solution to that problem that you're describing.
It's also so weird when people say that. They say, well, this person, first off, they assume like most or homeless people are just lazy and everything. Therefore, they should sleep on the street. It's like, my brother in Christ, we give convicted murderers a place to live. Like, are you telling me that, you know, this lazy guy deserves a worse life than a murderer? Because that's what you're saying. And they're like, yeah, of course. And it's just, it's weird. I don't
And like,
understand it at all.
it's not just lazy guys, you know, there's so many, there's children, there's
Yep.
women, right? Like there's so many people who end up unhoused, you know, and we think of it again, I think it's something like 40% of unhoused youth, they come from conservative Christian homes, and they're usually LGBTQIA plus part of that community, and that's why they're homeless. And it's just
Dark.
it's crazy. It's dark, yeah, but people, they think that any sort of moral failing deserves punishment like that, as if that's going to result in a fix to the behavior. But like
Yep.
John mentioned, how do you expect
That's a
someone
Judeo-Christian value that
Yep.
moral failing
exactly
deserves punishment just innately.
yeah, and I mean, if you morally fail enough, you deserve to be punished for all of eternity. So there it is. But yeah, like John mentioned earlier, how do you expect people to go even get a job if they can't shower?
Yeah.
Right, like there's so many basic things that I think people don't take into consideration when they're like, well, they can just go get a job. How? Like, with what transport? We don't have good public transport. Like, there's just so many factors that go into it.
If my Wi-Fi goes down for 30 minutes, my entire life is ruined. I can't
Yeah.
like I can't
Yeah.
imagine how people like expect homeless people to be able to function in our society. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of conservatives right now watching this in the comments. Go tell me why homeless people deserve to be on the streets in the richest country in America. And I can't wait to hear from you. And definitely subscribe to get angry about more things. And if you actually like this video, also subscribe. Thank you for watching The Left Wing. See you next time.